Thank you so much for joining us at California Courier. Can you introduce yourself for us?
Sure, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Bill Essayli, the First Assistant U.S. Attorney here at the Central District of California, overseeing LA and surrounding areas.
Perfect. Well, I want to start with your first day. So you were put in April 2025.
hmm
Um, Tell me about how that day was. Was it chaotic? Was it?
Well, yeah, that day was nuts because I was in the legislature literally up until the day before. So I've been in the California legislature fighting in the superminority on a lot of issues and basically just having no ability to effectuate change in Sacramento. All we could do is raise awareness on issues for the public to be aware of. And then literally within 24 hours to going from that role to being in a really important role, which is to be the chief top federal prosecutor for the largest district in the nation here in the Central District of California. So I resigned on April 1st, and some people thought it was an April Fool's joke. I was like, it's not a joke, it's real. And I got sworn in the following morning, and we went to work right away, and it's been very busy ever since that day.
What was one of like the first cases that you started working on?
Well, one of the first things I did was I kicked off the Homeless Fraud and Corruption Task Force. So this was an issue that would frequently come up in California legislature during budget discussions about where's all the homeless money going? We're spending billions and billions. I think at one point we had spent 24 billion within 5 years. It's probably much more than that now. And they want to just keep spending that money in that space. And we were asking, well, what happened to the money we already spent? And no one could provide an answer. There's no accountability. No one was tracking it. And so it's just like this black hole. And so one thing I know is that when you hand out billions of dollars, there's probably a lot of fraud because the homeless people are still on the street and there's more than ever. And so it clearly hasn't gone to the homeless. So where'd it go? So that's what we did. We set up a task force. It had all of our federal agencies, FBI, IRS, you name it. And we got to work quickly. And within a few months, we started bringing indictments against individuals and organizations that took money that was intended to alleviate homelessness, and they used it to pocket their books, to line their pockets, and to spend it on vacations and cars and homes and all the things fraudsters do. And so we're still very active in that space, but that was one of our first initiatives that we undertook.
Did that come as a surprise to you when
No.
you started uncovering this?
No, I think all of us knew there's a ton of fraud, but no one had been looking into it. No one was checking. So we did something very basic. We just followed the money. So we have very powerful tools. We have grand jury subpoenas. We have search warrants. There's all kinds of things we can do to try to get the evidence that we need. And so in working with IRS is very good at putting money trails together and figuring out where all the money went. So we just started following the money that went to a lot of these organizations, and that's how we made these cases. And yeah, we've got dozens of investigations that are currently ongoing, and I suspect you'll see more cases filed in that space.
I mean, walking on Skid Row, I've gone down a couple times and interviewed people out there. It feels like it has gotten worse in comparison to what Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, and others have stated. Also, our Governor Gavin Newsom, he likes to tout that there has been a 9% decrease throughout the state. But I guess my question to you is, why hasn't there been oversight on this issue? And why has it been you that has to be coming in and making the changes and arresting people?
I think that's a great question. The public deserves to have accountability for their tax dollars. And so you'd have to ask the people in power why they're not interested in that. I mean, you've got a state like California that's completely controlled by Democrats. Every branch of government, the legislative branch, the governor, the mayor. And I think the dirty little secret is a lot of these NGOs, a lot of these groups that are getting the money to help homelessness are politically aligned and political allies of the people in power. So they're their friends, so they're giving money out to their friends, and they're going to assume that their friends are doing the right thing. So they're not inherently skeptical, and I don't know that they really care how the money gets used. They just like the headline. They love saying that we have spent X dollars on homelessness. And that seems to be the end of the conversation for those people in power, is It's not about the results. It's about how much money you spend on a problem. And that's true for healthcare or transportation. I mean, they love to tout how much money they spend. They never tout results. And some would say, the skeptics out there would say, there's a lot of people making money off this. And if they actually solve the problem, it would dry up their income. So you have to wonder, is there really an incentive to fix the homeless problem? Or is it just very lucrative to have it be an ongoing issue for a lot of people?
When you started cracking down on the NGOs, did Karen Bass react at all?
Well, I mean, in a lot of cases, they're the victim. I mean, a lot of cases like LAHSA, the city, they're the ones handing out this money. So they're the victim of the fraudsters. Now, our position has been like, well, you should have been vetting and checking and doing accountability. So oftentimes their reaction is that they're shocked, they're surprised, they're glad that we got them. And so that's terrible. And yeah, and so, and this is where we fight with the governor a lot too in the hospice space, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about. But we don't want the money to get to the fraudsters in the first place. Like, I'm really the backstop. I'm, going after criminals after they've gotten the money, after they've committed the fraud. We're trying to chase after them and hold them criminally liable and try to get the money back. That's really hard to do, and it's very inefficient. It's much better to have the safeguards up front so they don't get it in the first place. So, I mean, you'd have to talk to them about why they're not interested in stopping the fraud before it occurs.
Yeah, it seems like the whole process is kind of significant in the way that it goes through the LA City Council LAHSA. There's all these stops, so it's kind of questionable as to say, like, you have X amount of stops to handle this money. Why hasn't there been checks and balances beforehand?
Yeah. Well, and maybe it was all perfect timing because LAHSA was coming under increased scrutiny. LAHSA is the Los Angeles's conglomerate government agency, whatever, that's handing out all the money. There was scrutiny on them. I think the CEO was stepping down around that time. There's been litigation in this space. I know there was a federal court case that ordered an audit, and they were unable to account for like $2 billion of money. And so there's been a lot of pressure. And then when we got in and we started filing the indictments, I think that was the final straw that broke the camel's back. And I think LAHSA is basically now defunct. They've laid off their employees. I don't think it will be in existence much longer. And now you have HUD just a few weeks ago announcing they're going to cut off all their financial federal dollars. So sometimes, it takes a few indictments to get things moving, but we're happy to facilitate that.
Yeah. Speaking of homelessness, before we go to the hospice fraud, Skid Row itself has been quite the talk for the last year just because of how big it is and how much of an issue it's gotten. But it also became about a hot topic to discuss during Spencer Pratt's run and the election. Tell me a little bit about what you were trying to do and kind of the backlash that you have gotten, if you've received any from the state or Karen Bass as well.
I mean, I don't know if we've got any backlash. We're doing our job. Our job is to enforce federal law. I'm not the elections czar. I don't run the California elections, but we're here to investigate federal crimes. And there are laws, there are federal laws that regulate how elections are to be conducted. One of the things we're looking at is whether people are being paid to register to vote or being paid to vote. That is against federal law. There's actually a statute that makes that a crime. And so that's one of the things we're looking at to see if people were in fact being paid to vote or to register. We announced a case a month or so ago against Brenda Brown. We did that case relatively quickly for the way federal cases work. We put that very quickly within a month or so of when James O'Keefe did his undercover videos. She was one of the people on video that was caught paying homeless people to register to vote. And so we charged her and she's pled guilty. So again, this is not a theory. It's not like some conspiracy theory. She's pled guilty. She's admitted it. She did it. And to her credit, she's owned up to it. And she's taken responsibility. And so, so that's what we're looking at. So what I can do is I can investigate specific violations of election law. We do have multiple investigations ongoing in that space that I can't really get into. But I'm not really sure what California's concern is. I mean, I would hope they share our interest in having fair and free and legal elections. And so they should welcome all kinds of scrutiny to make sure that only eligible U.S. citizens are voting. But unfortunately, they don't. That's not the way they look at it. And, when we charge a election fraud case, they just say, well, that's one isolated incident. There's no evidence that's widespread. Well, they said the same with hospice fraud. They said, well, there's no hospice fraud in California. Then we started charging hospice fraud. And like, well, those are a few bad actors, and there's fraud elsewhere too. So they just keep moving the bar of what they want to talk about. So now the latest thing is it's not widespread voter fraud. Okay, well, we don't know how widespread it is because no one's conducted a proper investigation.
Yeah.
We believe the best way to audit the California election is to get the voter roll. And that's something that Harmeet and I have been fighting for the last year. We have sued the state of California for refusing to hand over the voter roll. And that's important because once we have the voter roll, we can audit it and we can make sure that only eligible, living U.S. citizens are on there. California maintains very dirty, filthy voter rolls. They do not clean them up. So,
for the normie people outside of politics, explain a little bit about what the voter roll is.
So a voter roll is basically the list of registered voters, and those are the people who get a ballot when it's election time. So now California is all vote by mail. So anybody who's registered to vote, who's on that list, who's on the voter roll, they get a ballot in the mail, whether they're dead or alive, whether you live here or you don't. If you're on California's voter roll and the information is often not accurate, the ballot goes out in the mail to that person. And so we want to make sure that only people who are living here or alive and who are eligible U.S. citizens are receiving a ballot. And so that's the audit we want to have. We're up in the Ninth Circuit. We're litigating that. That is a civil statute. It's not a criminal statute because I often get like, well, why don't you just arrest all these people?
Yeah.
I can only arrest when I have a criminal statute. Congress hasn't given us that power. So so that's what we're doing. We're fighting to audit the voter rolls. We're doing that in court, and then we are looking at specific cases of voter fraud, and those are two kind of different things.
Does that entail seizing ballots at all, or no?
If there's a case in which we suspect there was a fraudulent ballot or there was a crime committed, we can seize that ballot.
Does Newsom's law, I believe it was SB 78, if I'm wrong, we can double check that, but he basically signed into law right before the primary election was that basically making it harder for federal agencies to seize ballots. Is that affecting
Well,
you?
state laws don't apply to us, so he can pass whatever laws he wants. We don't listen to his laws. He tried to pass a law requiring our agents not to wear a mask. That was struck down in court. He's trying to make our agents wear their names and ID tags. That was struck down as well. So California doesn't have the authority to regulate the federal government, so his laws don't apply to us, and our powers to investigate are totally independent.
And does LA City Council, I know that they just also passed a new law about allowing illegal immigrants to vote.
They actually just pulled it.
They did?
Yeah.
Okay, so they pulled it.
It was up on the second reading, and it failed.
If that went through, what does that look like? Like, what does that
that's a very murky area of law. Unfortunately, this is not something new. There are other cities who've allowed illegal immigrants to vote on local races.
Okay.
So as the federal government, we really only have the ability to regulate federal elections. So there's a lot of other elections that aren't federal. You have your mayor, your school board. And so unfortunately, the courts have said that cities can allow non-citizens to vote in non-federal elections. So places like, I think, San Francisco, where they allow non-citizens to vote in school board races, they have to keep a separate voter roll.
Okay.
And they got to send them a separate ballot. So they're allowed to do it if they do it right. Now, we don't trust them to do it right, but that's the way that would have worked. So unfortunately, there is a legal avenue for LA to do that. But thankfully, for whatever reason, the council reconsidered that proposal. So that's not happening.
Okay. And now moving on to, you never know with LA. It's
I'm
always
sure
tricky.
it'll come back at some point,
Moving on to hospice fraud, tell me about
But real quick, before we move on, people are looking to me, the Department of Justice, to the courts to sort of fix California's problems, fix their elections. That's not our role, and that's not our job. There's a political problem in California. There's a problem with the legislature. There's a problem with people in office. I can only prosecute and enforce crimes. I can only enforce laws that Congress has passed. And so, especially in this election space, Congress has a lot of power to regulate elections. They can ban vote by mail. They can ban ballot harvesting. They can require voter IDs. That's what the SAVE Act is about. That's what the president is fighting for in Congress. And really, that's their job, and they're the ones that need to regulate the elections. What people are trying to do by use us to accomplish that, it's not probably going to work. There's only so much we can do. We're going to do our best. We're going to fight. We're going to go to court. But Congress, at the end of the day, has the power to write laws.
Yeah.
And they should use it.
Well, I think they looked to you a little bit because you came in and you started arresting people, and they're like, "Oh, he actually works."
And I will keep doing that.
Yeah.
I will keep doing that. But there's a lot of areas where things are wrong, maybe even slightly corrupt, but it may not be illegal.
Yeah.
And that's the space we're operating in California. Ballot harvesting is allowed by state law. Ballot harvesting is illegal in most states, but in California, they made it legal. So, when the president says these elections are rigged, he also means like they've legally rigged it, that they've changed state laws to rig the elections in their favor. So that way they can go do the ballot harvesting. They can register people who aren't qualified to vote, and they just sort of, they won't, it's kind of like don't ask, don't tell. And so they're not checking their citizenship status. And so they've passed all these laws that allow them to sort of rig these elections.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. I mean, California is tricky in that way.
Yeah,
so.
they control all the levers of power.
And it's undeniably unlike any other state, which is also very interesting in itself. And it's been under a supermajority for over 15 years now. But
California is unique. You have a direct citizen initiative, so the voters can go directly to the ballot and write their own laws. And I think there's a ballot measure that's going to
voter ID
even potentially change how we do elections in California. So that's up to the public to decide if they want to write their own election law. So there's a lot of avenues this issue can be dealt with.
On that, tell me a little bit about voter ID, what you think of the ballot measure.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to say too much. I can't take a position on a ballot initiative, but I'll just say, like, from the view of the department, we believe that California's current election system is highly susceptible to fraud because there is no checking of immigration status at the time you register. They will let you register to vote literally with a gym card, which no one thinks is actually proof of citizenship. The voter rolls are dirty. They're not being maintained. This universal vote by mail floods the system with live ballots. And if you have dirty voter rolls, then you're going to have people getting ballots that shouldn't have them. And then you have ballot harvesting, which is illegal in most states, but legal in California, and no voter ID. So when you put all those things together, we believe that system is highly susceptible to fraud. It makes it very difficult to detect the fraud. It makes it very difficult to investigate the fraud, which is why we will bring cases, but we'll never be able to charge every single person who's ever engaged in voter fraud in an election. We just don't have those resources, and California has basically made that impossible.
And on the topic of fraud, tell me about the hospice fraud that you cracked down on. What was the first case that really broke this case back?
I think we did a big sweep either February or March. I'm kind of blending it all together right now. There's so much that's gone on. We've always done healthcare fraud at the U.S. Attorney's Office. There's just a renewed interest in it now. I think after Minnesota, after some of the Nick Shirley videos, it's like everyone sort of woke up to how problematic healthcare fraud is. And I think what's unique about healthcare frauds is the numbers just are astronomical because, normally we talk about millions of dollars, and hospice fraud or healthcare fraud, we're talking billions of dollars. And so California, we did a sweep earlier this year. And we arrest people who basically are running fake hospices. I mean, these are either doctors or nurses, or sometimes they're not medical professionals. They just get a hospice license, again, from California, just hands out hospice licenses like hotcakes. No questions asked. You can have one. You want two? Here you go. So once you have a license to operate a hospice, that allows you to bill Medicare for hospice services. So what they do is they either steal people's identities or they pay people to give them their social security numbers so that way they can bill them as a hospice patient to Medicare. And so we've been working really closely with Dr. Oz, who oversees CMS, who oversees Medicare, and he's put in a lot of tools to detect red flags in the payment systems for people who we think are engaged in fraud. One red flag is if your patients aren't dying, which sounds like a good thing, right?
You're keeping people
you're
alive.
keeping people alive. That's not supposed to happen in hospice. If you're going into hospice, you have a terminal illness and you're not expected to live past like 90 days.
Okay.
So one thing they could look at is out of the patients they're servicing, how many are still alive after 90 days, after 120 days. And some of these had 100% survival rates. So that's a huge red flag right there. And so then we work backwards and we charge the people. But again, it's not just hospice, it's Medi-Cal. So California runs its own Medicare system, and we got a guy to plead guilty in March for billing Medi-Cal $270 million in fraudulent medications within an 11-month period. So California suspended its pre-authorization requirement on, they were like upgrading their payment system, something dumb. And so they suspended that requirement that you had to have pre-authorization from the entity to bill for the medication. And this fraudster figured that out. And so he just started flooding the payment system.
Wow.
And this California just transferred him the money, like just hundreds of millions of dollars in 11 months to one guy. And so that's what we're talking about when California does not do enough to detect the fraud, prevent the fraud, and then they just act completely shocked and offended when they learn about the fraud.
Has there been a conversation with Newsom, like on a state level?
We don't talk to Newsom. He doesn't talk to us. The only time we hear from Newsom is when he tweets out from his troll account.
Yeah.
But we'd love to have a better relationship with the state, whether it's to fight election fraud, homeless fraud, healthcare fraud. Sure, they'll cooperate when we have a case open and where we need evidence to charge a particular person. They'll give us what we need.
Yeah.
But they're not working with us in any collaborative way to sort of detect the fraud and to stop it. In fact, they continue gaslighting and providing misleading information about the extent of the fraud and who's responsible for the fraud.
Well, because it just seems that there's no oversight from the state. Same thing with this homelessness issue of no oversight on city council, of LAHSA. So you would think that as soon as you're cracking down, they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, let's implement some stuff or regulations here. But at least from my reporting in other areas as well, the state just kind of, whether it's overwhelmed, maybe you could talk more.
I don't think they ever want to admit that their policies are wrong. And so in order to say like, okay, the way we've been doing homelessness hasn't worked, we're going to change our policies, that would be an admission that they failed. And they'll never do that. They will double down and they will put more money after a failed program, I think just out of ego or out of just serving whatever their interests are. But for example, in the homeless space, their position is housing first. So they said, before we're going to talk about mental health treatment or rehab or anything, we have to get these people off the street and into a home. And so they want to spend the money building condos in LA, like $800,000 condos. And like the person on the street doesn't need a condo. They need a bed, and so, we were pushing an alternative policy, which was shelter first. Let's build shelters where we can get people treatment and get them services. But they've resisted that. They don't want to do that. They want to build homes. So they think they're home builders. So these are the type of failed policies they've continued to double down on. Now you have to question who's making money off that. Like that's what I always ask is who's profiting from that? So there's a lot of developers, a lot of union jobs, a lot of construction workers who benefit off these building projects. And those people in turn support these politicians financially and elsewhere. So it's not necessarily illegal, but it's legalized.
Tell me
it's legalized bribery, if you want to call it that. I mean, they spend money on them, and in return, they spend money on politics. It's just this incestuous circular relationship.
Yeah, you said unions. Now, unions are a big deal out here. They are in a lot of major cities. The unions specifically, though, out here have a lot of money, and they have a lot of power. What have you seen the union connection between the homelessness as well?
I don't know that I've seen a big union connection other than maybe like the construction projects I'm sure they're invested in, but with the homelessness it tends to be more the NGOs. So there's a lot of these NGOs, these non-governmental organizations, these nonprofits who take in most of the money, and they're supposed to be servicing the homeless. For example, there was one entity, Abundant Blessings, the owner, Mr. Sufer, he was supposed to be housing at one point, I want to say like 500 homeless people. He was supposed to be putting them in housing, whether it's a hotel room or getting them shelter. And he didn't do that. He would put them in the hotels, motels, and he never would pay for them. And so LAHSA knew, because the hotel would call LAHSA and just say, hey, your organization hasn't paid their monthly bill. We're going to evict these homeless people. So LAHSA then just paid again. So they were double paying for the same people they're supposed to be taking care of. Meanwhile, he took the money and he bought a home in Westwood. He bought a home in Greece. He had a Range Rover. He was shopping at Hermes.
He was doing pretty well for himself.
He was doing well. Yeah, he was very abundantly blessed. He abundantly blessed himself. And he was going to the Four Seasons in Hawaii. So that's where the money went. And so, again, why do they continue to give someone like him money after there's no evidence he's actually helping the homeless? You have to go ask them.
Yeah.
You know, and so, but yeah, I would say the NGOs have specifically benefited from these homeless policies. In fact, also in the drug space. So they have this harm reduction policy, which is dumb. It's more harm enabling. So they say, you know, we're going to make sure people are using drugs safely. So instead of helping them from stopping using drugs, they have a black Jeep that drives around Skid Row, MacArthur Park, hands out drug kits like needles, alcohol pads, tourniquets, like everything you need to use drugs. And we found out one of them was actually selling drugs too. So the guy, I believe PATH was the organization, People Assisting the Homeless, PATH. We indicted one of their leaders for selling fentanyl, for selling drugs to homeless people at MacArthur Park. So
very convenient.
Very convenient. He's an all service provider. Yeah.
Yeah, they also have those packages at the health resource centers. I don't know if you've been down to the one that like is pretty new. I went down a couple weeks ago and had my source grab me a packet so that I could like do an unboxing video of it.
Oh, your own drug kit?
Yeah.
Okay.
He forgot to ask for the pipe, like the Pookie pipe. So I just had the needles, but I was there. They were like, do you want a pipe? Do you want needles?
Yeah,
What kind of needles
whatever
do you
want,
want?
they'll give it to you. And
then
that's taxpayer funded.
Yes, taxpayer funded. Also had a vending machine of Narcan. And just on some of the streets that we were walking, there's just Narcan like laid out on the street.
Yeah, and they'll stick them on the walls.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where they spend all the money. But you know, Karen Bass at the last debate said something interesting. She changed her position on that, and now she says she doesn't support handing out needles. But we haven't really seen a change in that on the ground. So it'll be interesting to see where the leadership goes on that, because I do think it's swinging back. Yeah. I think that's something we're seeing now, as the public has just gotten fed up with the open air drug use, with the homelessness, and they've spent the money. You know, they've elected the people who said they're going to fix it, and it hasn't been fixed. So I think people are very frustrated. And so again, I cannot fix that. I can't change that. But what I can do is arrest drug dealers.
You mean you can't save the whole city?
I cannot save the whole city, but I can go to MacArthur Park and arrest a bunch of drug dealers and work with LAPD to give them support they need to clean up the park from the drug users or get them help. And so we're going to use all the tools we have, and hopefully I think it will make a difference. MacArthur Park, I think, is very different from when I first saw it a few months ago. It was like zombie land.
Yeah.
So we've significantly reduced the gang activity and the drug dealing activity there. We did a big operation on Figueroa yesterday, and so we're going after the human trafficking in Figueroa. So we're going to use our tools where we can to make the community better.
Sticking with drugs, how involved are the cartels? When I've gone out to Skid Row and talked to some of my sources down there, you know, they say that drug sales are an issue, the cartels are an issue, that people not only just on Skid Row get the drugs, but people from all over come out specifically to Skid Row to get drugs. Yeah,
MacArthur Park, Skid Row, there's areas where people know they can get drugs easily, and the demand is high there, so they supply it.
Yeah.
Typically, these areas are controlled by particular gangs. So MacArthur Park, the area we were focused on was claimed by the 18th Street gang. And so And so you have different gangs, but a lot of them have ties to cartel, because cartel is the main supplier of the drugs themselves. The methamphetamine and the fentanyl comes from the cartel most usually. And so when we did our operation in MacArthur Park, we did discover a cartel connection. We were able to actually indict and arrest one of the main suppliers of the fentanyl to the park. And we raided their home, and we got almost 20 kilos of fentanyl just from that one hit. It's a lot, it's a ton. And so, yeah, I mean, the cartels are profiting off the drug use. They're selling the drugs to these gangs who then sell it on the streets. And there's an international component. So we have put a lot of resources to try to dismantle those operations. And the president is too. I mean, you look at what he's doing in South America, what he's doing in Mexico. So we're committed on disrupting the cartel's activities, both domestically and overseas.
I was just about to ask, have they been concerned about the border shutdown? Really, when it happened was when Trump entered back into office. Has that been a concern for them on that side, or has it?
Well, they're very resourceful. I mean, look, it's made a huge dent. I mean, we're seeing much less traffic, but you're never going to be able to stop all of it. And so they're using boats. They're trying to, get it off the beach or use other ways to smuggle it in. They're very creative in trying to smuggle it in through trucks and cargo and other things. So they're still getting it in, not at the rates they were used to before, but enough to supply and kill a lot of people. But I think that's why you have to have a multifaceted approach. It can't just be us enforcing the laws here. You got to have Mexico cracking down on the cartels in Mexico, shutting down the labs, going after the leadership. We were able to get a main drug supplier, Ryan Wedding, who was one of the largest drug suppliers to Canada, but he would traffic the drugs through California to get to Canada. So he was hiding in Mexico, and we were able to apprehend him a few months ago. And so we're very aggressive in trying to get after the leadership of the cartels and dismantling their operations.
Speaking of foreign entities, CCP has also been a hot topic for you guys. Tell me about some of those cases that you have worked on and what the CCP's involvement in California has been.
Yeah, China's one of our biggest adversaries, and so we have a lot of assets dedicated to tracking their activities here in the U.S., both on the counterintelligence side and in just the criminal side. And so on the counterintelligence side, we see that they try to influence people in power. They try to get access to things they shouldn't get access to, whether it's classified records or sensitive information. One case that we brought recently was for a mayor, I think of Arcadia, in which she was acting as an agent, a foreign agent of China, and was taking orders from them, direction from them, and she was maintaining sort of a pro-Chinese propaganda outlet for them here. So they would literally tell her what statements to publish and what messages to get out that they wanted out here. And so, and that was very concerning to us. And we were, city council, probably very limited what damage she would be able to do. But if she moved up in office, which is our concern, is, that they start in city council, and then if she's elected to Congress one day or something, that could be very, very dangerous to the U.S. to have a Chinese agent, someone who's acting as an agent of China in very high level senior positions. So we're very concerned about China's attempts to influence people in power here in the U.S. And it's not just China. I mean, we see other foreign actors. Iran does a lot in this space too. They tend to be more, I would just say, callous and more like thugs in what they do. But they will hack systems. They will put out hits on people. There's a lot that these adversaries do, and so we're constantly monitoring their activities.
Is that something that, I guess, to me, an everyday average Californian doesn't even think about the foreign entities that could be in this state? Is that something that you've seen a lot? Like, what is?
So in my office, we have 3 divisions. I have the civil division, which handles all the civil litigation on behalf of the United States. We have the criminal division, which we've been mostly talking about, and I also have a third division that's a national security division. And so that division is dedicated to counterterrorism and counterintelligence, so espionage. And so they work full time with the FBI. The FBI is charged with those subject areas, and there's a large number of FBI agents who their entire job is to work on these cases, is to track our adversaries' activities, their whereabouts, and know exactly what they're doing here in our district. And so there's a lot of resources that go into that. There's a lot we can't talk about in that space. And so, I think that's something that's interesting. I think people just take a lot of things for granted, that it's pretty safe here. I mean, sure, you can get stabbed in the streets of LA, but there's a lot that goes in to make sure we don't have terrorist attacks. We don't have, these mass casualty events, and a lot of that work you'll never see, you'll never hear about. You hear about some of it. We have disrupted some of those plots. We had a big one for New Year's Eve, the Turtle Island Liberation Front, which sounds silly, but they were a very serious group of leftists who wanted to blow up logistics centers on New Year's Eve. And so we monitored them until the point where they were out in the desert putting bombs together to practice, and we disrupted them. And so that could have been extremely dangerous had they gone through with their plans. And just recently with the UFC event at the White House, there were two individuals in our district who were part of a larger conspiracy who wanted to go out there and assassinate political leadership in Washington, D.C. And so that's a very important area that we work on as well.
Yeah, I know that there was concerns, especially for the Olympics coming out here.
And the World Cup.
And the World Cup. What I was told was that basically local police are just super understaffed right now. Kind of backtracking here, how is your relationship between LAPD as well and kind of doing these cases?
We actually have a really good relationship with most of our local law enforcement, including LAPD. Now, their hands are tied by state law, city laws, as far as the immigration space. They won't help us. They won't assist us. Anything having to do with immigration. But on, and again, that's something Congress could fix, but they choose not to. But on other things like sex trafficking, drugs, drug dealing, terrorism, I mean, we work very, very closely hand in hand with our local law enforcement. They need us. In some instances, we need them. And so it's a very symbiotic, cooperative relationship. And so we do work really well with them. And I do think Jim McDonald has done a good job of managing all those various pressure points and leading the department in the environment he's in.
Now, you also talked about Figueroa Street. Tell me about that crackdown and the human trafficking, because there was a video that came out. I forget by who, but it was basically a inside look on what Figueroa kind of does. Yeah,
there's been a lot of attention on Figueroa. Figueroa is the corridor here in LA. It's well known for being an area where you can engage in commercial sex trafficking. And so if you drive down there, you would normally see a bunch of women on the street who are being solicited for commercial sex, including minors. Kids as young as 14 years old are being lured into this area. Often, again, they're run by gangs. There's a Hoover Street gang that we've targeted that claims that area as their territory. And they recruit these girls from foster care online. They promise them affection. They shower them with love and money and get them to be with them. And then they will then pressure them and turn them into being commercial sex workers, and they keep all the money. The pimp keeps the money, and then the woman usually is forced to work. And if she doesn't, they will use violence to force her to do that. They will brand them. They will tattoo monikers on them, like literally claiming them as property. They will beat them. They will rape them. They will threaten them and coerce them. And so a lot of them are terrified. And that's how they keep them in the game. And so what we focus on is the pimps and the leadership of the gangs that are facilitating this. We just completed our second operation in Figueroa. We did one last year in August, Operation Broken Blade. And then we did one yesterday, which is part 2. We've charged in total 25 different individuals with sex trafficking. They're looking at really serious charges, minimum 15 years in federal prison, up to life in prison. So when we get involved, these are extremely serious offenses, and this is not state court. You're going to go to prison for a long time, and you're going to do your time. In federal prison, you do 85% of your sentence. California, you're lucky if you do half. They call it good time, half time. But I think it's even less than half now. So that's really important work. It's very hard work because a lot of the victims aren't very cooperative with law enforcement because they're afraid, many reasons why. And so we have some really dedicated prosecutors who, this is all they do. They focus on these victims and these type of work, and we're going to keep bringing those cases. And hopefully it'll start making a dent. LAPD has said they've seen a huge drop-off in prostitution in Figueroa since we began these operations, and we're going to continue them.
I don't know if you would know this, but for those victims, have a chunk of them been illegals as well?
No, most of them are American girls.
Okay.
A lot of them are young black women, girls. And again, they target the foster system, foster care, because they're vulnerable. They don't have a parent. And in California, the laws, it's something you should look at. The laws on foster care are ridiculous. The foster facilities aren't allowed to lock them in, meaning they're not allowed to prevent them from leaving as a minor. So they could be 14 years old and they can walk in and out of the facility at any hour of the day, including at 2 o'clock in the morning. And they have no power to stop them. And so these gangsters take advantage of that. So they hang out at these facilities. They recruit them. And under state law, the foster workers can't do much to stop it other than call the police.
I think one of the laws that was called out during the hot peak of talking about Figueroa was a law brought by Scott Wiener. And so I think
he legalized loitering.
Yes.
So that was another important tool where police could, again, and there's a misconception about this. If there's someone standing on the street and it appears they're there to sell themselves for sex, the police used to be able to arrest them or take them in. Now, the goal is to, if they figure out they're being trafficked, they're not there to put them in jail. They're there to get them resources. But it was a tool to get them off the street and get them some help. But of course, that gets twisted as, oh, we're going after the victims. And so Scott Wiener has a lot of twisted ideologies, but that's one of them. So he took that away. So now, you could have an area that's just known for prostitution, and the prostitutes can just sit on the corner all day, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And so that's the result of some of these really bad laws coming out of Sacramento.
Yeah. When you're going up against Sacramento and these laws that have been, handed down, what is that like? Are you tired every day?
Well, I'm not going up against them because that's more of an issue for the locals. The locals deal with the day-to-day crimes of, prostitution. We don't deal with prostitution. We deal with the sex trafficking. So we deal with the pimps side of it. So it doesn't impact our work, but indirectly it does, because if the locals can't keep things under control, it just makes the problem even worse. And then we have to step in and do bigger operations and invest more resources. So it just gives us more work to do, and we have to invest more resources in it. But it's just very sad that California won't fix its policies to help these girls, help these victims, help the public, help the taxpayer. It seems like they consistently go out of their way to help the wrong person, to help the criminal, to help the criminal illegal alien, let them out of jail and protect them from deportation after they've been arrested for a crime. There's all kinds of areas where you can look at California's policies as basically backwards. And you have to wonder, when you're up there, who do these people represent?
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like they represent the citizens of the districts that elected them.
You've called California the kingdom of fraud, I believe. That's a direct quote.
Yeah.
And
a fraudster's paradise.
Yes, and fraudster's paradise. I think Newsom had some words on those quotes specifically. But for the everyday person, is there really that much fraud, or?
Yeah, I think there's a ton of fraud. If you just look at the cases my office has charged, I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars in fraud. I think that if there's a proper accounting, you're going to find that California has probably lost hundreds of billions of dollars to fraud. I mean, if you just look at like EDD, unemployment fraud during COVID, there was $30 billion lost, not lost, but that was given out to fraudsters. Literally $30 billion in unemployment benefits that were handed out to people that submitted false information. And most of that money left California, it left the country. So you've got that. You've got the billions spent on homelessness that have ended up in fraud. You've got the healthcare fraud. I mean, I just outlined a case that was $200 million in fraud. It's just one case.
Yeah.
So when you put all these things together, all the fraud price tag, it's going to be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. And just think what could have been done with that money. And rather than wake up and say, wow, we could really repurpose that money and we should do better, California doubles down and says, there's no fraud.
Do you think
it's crazy? I mean, it's very hard. I think that's what the hard part of where we're at right now is like, it's hard to have a logical conversation with anyone in power in California because it's just like the truth doesn't matter, facts don't matter. They just regurgitate fake talking points and they think the public is dumb and won't know the difference. And then they politicize everything. So then they just throw Trump's name in every other sentence and they think, you know, that will distract people enough. And so
why do you think that is?
Well, because they know and they've learned that with Trump derangement syndrome that that overrides logic. And so if they can just blame everything on Trump, that their base will believe that and absolves them of responsibility.
But why do you think they basically gaslight people to say that there's nothing wrong with California? I mean, again, like if you use homelessness, Newsom is fine with saying that there's a decrease. But you go down on the streets, just here, you don't even have to go to Skid Row. You can go down here. I was in Long Beach yesterday. I saw a guy pooping in the middle, like on the side of the street. So, you know, when you have people that live up in Sacramento that, you know, live in nice houses and they tell you that everything's fine within this state, there's nothing wrong with it. Why do you think that they do that?
You know, it's sort of the same reason people, like when you ask a communist, like why, like where has communism worked? Like, why do you believe in this? And they'll usually, if you really pin them down, they'll just say, well, they just didn't do it right? Or they didn't put enough resources into it. So they will justify their policies as like, well, we just don't have enough money for homelessness. If we had more money, we would be able to fix the problem. And so they don't want to admit they're wrong and they don't want to admit they failed. So they lie and they gaslight. And to their credit, it works.
Yeah.
I mean, the California legislature is primarily Democratic and controlled by Democrats, and they get overwhelmingly reelected. So why would they change what they're doing?
Do you think the everyday voter just isn't putting two to two together?
I think we live in a world where people are very politicized and tribalized, and so they're not willing to vote across the aisle if they identify with a party.
Do you think it's possible to clean up the city?
I think with the right leadership, anything's possible. And I think President Trump is providing a lot of that missing leadership. And so that's why he's saying we're going to clean up these cities with or without the help of the Democrats. I mean, today there was a big operation in Chicago to go after violent crime. That's not something Chicago is ever going to do, but the federal government's going to step in and do it. You've seen what the president's done with Washington, D.C. I mean, I was there just a month ago, and it's a whole new place. Like, you feel safe walking around. You can walk around the monuments. There's constant patrol, police presence, National Guard. It's a whole different place now under his leadership, and that's really the missing thing here is leadership. And so we'll provide the leadership that we can with the resources that we have and the tools that we have, but I still think California has a lot of potential, and we'll see what happens. I mean, the voters at the end of the day have most of the power.
Yeah. Federalization, so like the National Guard, for example, I mean, when Trump brought in the National Guard for the anti-ICE riots, there was, you know, backlash. I mean, it was chaotic down there. I went to the riots. I observed them. I reported on them. And do you think that could ever, like, what would that look like on Skid Row? Like, if you ever brought in the National Guard on Skid Row?
So the National Guard is very complicated. So we were able to use the National Guard because we had federal agents and federal properties, like my building, were being attacked. And the locals weren't able or unwilling to or they were either unable or unwilling to protect us, protect our agents from assaults, to protect our facilities from being attacked. And so that's why the president called in the National Guard. DC is unique because it's a federal city, but we're very limited in how we can use the National Guard. So without an invitation, we wouldn't be able to send the National Guard just to Skid Row.
Yeah.
So our hands are tied. But we have a lot of agents. We have FBI agents, we have ATF agents, we have DE agents. So I think what you see is different, at different times, we'll target particular hotbeds, hot areas, hot zones, and we'll flood it with agents. And we can do that. And you saw that in Chicago, you saw that in LA, you saw that in Minnesota.
Yes. I guess my last question to you would be, what would be one takeaway, again, for the normie people? Like there are people, you know, I think we talk about this a lot, or at least I talk about this a lot outside of politics, is that your everyday person isn't really going to care about stuff unless they're being affected. But California is obviously radically changing, and it's going in a downhill stream right now, at least within LA. I mean, you look at the culture, you look at the city, you look at the crime rates, you look at the streets, homelessness, all of it. What would be one thing that you would say to the average person on why they should start caring about these issues?
Well, look, my parents immigrated here from another country, from Lebanon, you know, and we were born and raised here. But, you know, our parents reminded us every day, like, how special it is to live in America, be born in America. We're the freest country in the world. We're still the best country in the world. And unfortunately, it seems like a lot of people have just taken that for granted. And I think a lot of people haven't realized that we can quickly devolve. We can lose all of this security, all this protection, all this freedom can very quickly be lost. And so I would encourage people to just look around, walk around, take a walk in downtown LA and see, is this how you want to live? Like, do you want to live with people, mentally ill people, instead of getting help in a facility, being allowed to live in their own filth on the sidewalk? People using drugs in broad daylight, people shooting up fentanyl in the park. Or do you want a park where you could take your kids to and let them play around without being worried about picking up a needle or getting stabbed by a needle? So to me, you know, I have a hard time understanding how people can reconcile that. Like, they take a look around, they don't like what they see, but they're not willing to change anything that they're doing or any of their beliefs. So I don't have an answer. I don't know how you deal with the cognitive dissidence, but I'm hoping it doesn't get so bad before people then realize that change is needed. Hopefully that won't happen. So we'll see. I'm doing my part. I think what I would tell people is complain less, especially conservatives. Complain a lot. I get a lot of the complaints, and I usually ask them, what are you doing? And so don't complain to me. I'm doing my job. You know, I'm ushering the resources of the U.S. Attorney's Office. And when I ask people, you know, to come join us, so come work in my office, they will often have many reasons why they can't, or why they can't work in government service. We have a limited window under this administration to change this country and prevent it from disappearing. And if people are unwilling to step up, to go work in government, to go get involved, we're going to lose the country. And everyone thinks someone else is going to save them. Nobody's going to save you. The Supreme Court's not going to save you. I'm not going to save you. Like one person cannot save the whole country. Everyone's looking for one person to fix it all. And that's not going to happen. It's going to take everyone getting involved and doing what they can do. If that means running for a school board, if it means running for city council, if it means organizing, do it. Because if you don't, you're going to lose each and every time. And that's what my biggest takeaway is.
I lied. Last question. After, because you said that this is a limited time that you have, this limited window. Are there any next steps that you're thinking about coming back in California?
I don't really think past tomorrow. So I'm so busy. I take it one day at a time. None of us know how long we're going to be in our positions. We serve at the pleasure of the president. So I'm more focused on, I don't know if there's going to be an after this. I mean, if we, you know, if the wrong person wins the election after this one, I mean, we could lose everything we've done in this last in the prior 4 years. We'll be completely undone. I really think if President Trump hadn't won this last election, we would be in major trouble.
Yeah.
I don't know that we could have survived 4 more years of the prior policies.
Yeah.
So, but I really hope people wake up, and it's really easy to point the finger and say those people need to wake up, but maybe people should look in the mirror too.
Well, thank you so much. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.